I am the despised supporting male character in this novel. After failing in my attempts to win them over, I am consumed by a desire for death. All I want is to return to my original world as soon as possible. Yet, once they realize I have truly lost the will to live, those who once betrayed me start coming back. They beg me not to die, not to leave them just like that. But me, I let go of them long ago. Chapter 1. I failed to win over the novel's hopelessly devoted second female lead. I had tried to change her fate, to stop her from committing suicide over her unrequited love for the protagonist. But she still walked away from our engagement party the moment she got a call from him. When the crowd dispersed, I found myself alone on the rooftop terrace of the Yi family's high-rise. My mind was fixated on a single question for the system: if I destroyed this body, could I finally return home? Upon receiving a confirming answer from the system, I took a step toward the railing, but I had barely moved when a scoff sounded from behind me. I turned to see a familiar face: Rebecca, my adopted sister without a single drop of shared blood. I had found her in a dumpster when she was 7, brought her home, and raised her alongside me until she was 14, at which point her wealthy biological parents reclaimed her. The next time we met, she had become one of Edward's many fanatical admirers. My years of working 3 jobs to put her through school had only been enough to evoke her excitement upon our initial reunion. Afterward, she quickly saw me as the vile, envious loser rumored to hate Edward, and the only thing left in her gaze was mockery and guardedness. At my engagement party with Veronica, news arrived that the protagonist, Edward, had been kidnapped, and with it, everyone at the event was swept away, including my fiancée. Before leaving, she had even gripped my wrist, her gaze harsh and distrustful. "It better not be your doing," she said, turning her back on me without another glance. It was the 100th time she had chosen Edward over me since I'd come into this story, and so the system had deemed me a failure. The reason she was labeled the hopelessly devoted second female lead became clear. Her redemption was only a product of the system's and my wishful thinking. Thinking this, I couldn't help but let a sneer cross my face as I looked at Rebecca with a newfound disdain. "I don't know why you're still here, but you'd better stay out of my business," I said. "You might just miss your chance to flaunt yourself in front of your dream guy if you linger too long." After all, this so-called kidnapping was nothing but a stunt orchestrated by Edward and his family. Their only aim was to ruin my wedding with Veronica today. Once everyone was gathered, Edward himself would reappear, right on cue. Chapter 2. Perhaps it was because I'd never treated her like this before, but Rebecca froze, looking momentarily stunned, as though she wanted to say something. I turned my back on her, no longer willing to look. Now that I had failed to win over my target, I had no reason to remain in this world. The only silver lining was that the system acknowledged my genuine effort in completing the mission. It granted me immunity from punishment, as long as I left this world within the time frame it set. This way, I could avoid being erased. Yet, I remembered that my body in the original world was also on the brink of death from a terminal illness. Thinking of the gentle yet heartbroken gaze in my parents' eyes before I came into this novel, I gritted my teeth and quickened my steps toward the railing. "Nestor, what are you doing?" Rebecca's voice grew increasingly anxious as I neared the railing. She followed closely behind, saying, "What kind of stunt are you pulling now? Didn't you already figure out that threatening suicide won't work on Veronica? Besides, after all the wrongs you've done, even if you died here today, it wouldn't change a thing. You'd still be nothing compared to Edward." Her words were cut off because, from her perspective, I had leaped over the railing without hesitation, plunging toward the glittering lights of the city below. The world expanded around me as I fell, the rushing wind stinging my ears, but nothing could snuff out the thrill in my heart. I was going home, back to my parents and friends. I would leave all the grievances and regrets I had accumulated here behind. Just a little more, just a little further. I closed my eyes, anticipation swelling within me. In the next instant, the sensation of freefall came to an abrupt halt. My arm had been grabbed, the tugging pain yanking me back to this world. I opened my eyes and looked up to see Rebecca, half her body wedged between the railings, gripping onto me for dear life. "Let go," I said calmly. Rebecca clenched her teeth, her eyes reddened with effort. "Nestor, fine. You win. You're acting convincingly, but this changes nothing." "Veronica." Let go." I struggled fiercely, unwilling to hear Veronica's name again. Rebecca, in her rush to catch me, hadn't had time to think and had simply lunged forward. Luckily for her, she was wedged between the railings, but over time, her body was also beginning to hang precariously, her pale arms trembling from exertion. The moment I started struggling, she could no longer hold on. "Stop moving, or we're both going to fall," she yelled, her voice straining with panic. Seeing that I had no intention of heeding her, Rebecca took a deep breath, softening her tone in desperation. "I'm not going to let you die. If you do this, I'll fall with you. Do you really want to drag me down with you, Nestor?" Her tone was intimate, even a little pleading. just like the old days when she lived under my roof, and we depended on each other. Back then, I had treated Rebecca as the only family I had in this world. I spoiled her, and as a result, she'd gotten used to acting a bit spoiled around me. Now, I lifted my head, meeting the girl's bright, starry eyes. She was looking back at me, a semblance of expectation lurking beneath her feigned composure. Was she, waiting for me to respond? The thought almost made me laugh at my own delusion, and I did laugh, looking directly into her eyes as I spoke slowly and deliberately. Whether you live or die, who cares? All the color drained from her face in an instant. Rebecca stared at me blankly, as if unable to process my response, her grip loosening. A glimmer of hope flickered in my heart. Chapter 3. Just as her fingers were about to slip, a cry came from the side, and shouts for help started echoing around us. Rebecca snapped back to reality, tightening her grip on me once more. She glanced down at her nearly released hand, her expression conflicted. When we were both pulled back to safety, she was uncharacteristically silent, a change from her usual antagonism toward me. Later, when I tried to slip past the guards and jump over the railing again, Rebecca pushed through the crowd. Without a word, she seized my wrist in front of everyone. With Edward still missing, "You're the primary suspect. I have a duty to keep an eye on you," she said, her eyes rimmed with red. When she noticed me looking, she turned her head away, pouting with indignation. For a split second, I saw a hint of sadness on her face. Sad about what? I let out a bitter laugh. Rebecca was once the only daughter of the Song family, abandoned by her parents' business rivals, a girl forced to survive in the slums, bullied by other kids, chased off by vicious dogs, with nowhere left to go. She had hidden in a pile of trash in a dim alley, enduring the stench of rotting garbage in the middle of a sweltering July, afraid to take even a single step beyond the safety of that alley. There she'd waited, a small, crumpled figure, among rats and cockroaches, awaiting decay. Her one act of courage had been to call out to me, a boy passing by after school. Afterward, I took her out of that trash heap, cleaned her up, and dressed her in clothes my mother had left behind, altered to fit her. I was only 12 then. Sharing the community welfare allowance meant for one between the two of us. When I first arrived here, I hadn't even remembered I was a transmigrator or a player in a game. I had no cheats or advantages. To ensure that Rebecca had books to read and meat to eat, I scoured the streets for bottles after school, and on weekends, I washed dishes at a small diner. Underage workers are kept hidden, so I earned far less than the others. It took 4 dishes washed to earn a single penny. How many dishes would it take to secure a future for Rebecca and me? I didn't know. I simply picked up each dish, rinsed, scrubbed, and repeated, numb to the process. The diner's stifling back kitchen, the whirring Nestor fan, and the thick grease stains were the markers of my childhood. I once asked Rebecca why, of all the people passing by that alley, she had called out to me. The young girl had smiled up at me, her face beaming. She said she had chosen me after watching for a long time, believing that, out of everyone, I was genuinely kind. And now, this same Rebecca, after being taken back by her birth parents at 14, had never contacted me again. The one who once claimed to believe in my kindness had, after only a few moments' hesitation, chosen the protagonist's side whenever we clashed. She'd loudly condemned me, expressing her disappointment and disdain. Thanks to her insistence on keeping watch over me on Edward's behalf, I had no chance to attempt suicide again for the entire return trip. She had even called several bodyguards to keep an eye on me. After seeing me jump without hesitation twice, she finally realized that I wasn't bluffing. I genuinely wanted to die. Her attitude toward me softened considerably. On the way, she even tried to patiently console me. She said, "You may have done plenty of wrongs in the past, but Edward isn't one to hold grudges. If you just apologize sincerely, things can go back to the way they were." Uninterested, I closed my eyes, resting throughout the journey. Only when she mentioned Veronica did I show a glimmer of interest. Seeing this, Rebecca's smile took on a hint of bitterness. But now, I had no interest in her emotional shifts. All I could think about was Veronica, who adored the protagonist so completely. Maybe, just maybe, if I provoked her using her beloved Edward, she might actually kill me for him. Chapter 4. Veronica, after all, was my target. As the obsessive, emotionally intense second female lead in this book, she had a privileged background, immense family wealth, and an unhappy childhood. Edward was the single ray of light and her salvation during her youth. Even after growing into a domineering CEO capable of shaking the business world and encountering countless people, her unwavering devotion to Edward remained unchanged. In the end, she paved the way for the female lead and, after the protagonist couple reached their happy ending, chose to end her life in solitude by jumping into the sea. I had first awakened to my role as a player after Edward transferred to my high school in my second year. By then, Veronica had already fallen head over heels for Edward, who had once shared his umbrella with her in the rain. Her love for Edward was both hidden and intense. She could even accept being with another man she didn't love just to make Edward happy, and that man was me. At the time, Edward mistakenly thought I had an ambiguous relationship with the female lead, Angelica, and drowned his sorrows in alcohol. No matter how much Veronica tried to comfort him, it was to no avail. Finally, Veronica decided to pursue me. Keeping her enemy close was her way of keeping an eye on the person who was always competing with Edward. The ridiculous part is that I actually thought my persistence had finally moved her. I even joked with the system, saying that sincerity could melt even the iciest hearts. Ice can melt, sure, but sadly, it wasn't melting for me. Chapter 5. When Veronica returned, Rebecca was sitting in the living room, watching over me. Her surveillance was so intense I could do nothing. Bored, I started playing a game. That was when I heard the servants outside welcoming Veronica home. In the next second, the game console was slapped out of my hands. Veronica's perfectly made-up face loomed large before me. Before I could react, she shoved me to the ground. A choking pressure gripped my throat as she wrapped her hands around my neck, squeezing with all her strength. Her crimson nails dug into my skin, and as I looked up, I saw her reddened, furious eyes. She demanded, "Where have you hidden Edward?" Ah, so they still hadn't found him. I couldn't help but smirk. Of course, he was the protagonist. He wouldn't make an appearance until everyone's attention was properly piqued. My smirk must have provoked her further because Veronica tightened her grip, as though she truly intended to choke me to death and finally rid herself of the rage she harbored. Honestly, I was fine with it. If she choked me to death here, not only would I get sent back, but this toxic woman would also face criminal charges, spending her later years in a prison cell. Then, the next second, a gasp sounded from the side. Rebecca rushed forward, forcefully shoving Veronica off me. She was furious, helping me up as she shielded me behind her. "Veronica, you almost killed him just now." Veronica, looking down at her hands in shock, glanced up, her expression hardening as her gaze settled on me standing silently behind Rebecca. "Rebecca, Nestor is my fiancé. Whatever happens between us is none of your business," she declared coldly. She brushed past Rebecca and ordered me, "Come here," but I didn't respond to Veronica's call like I used to. Rebecca, unable to hold back anymore, tightened her protective stance around me, shouting, "So you know he's your fiancé? Is this how you treat him? Who gave you the right? He arranged for Edward's kidnapping. Edward's life is still in danger." Veronica's rage twisted her delicate features. "Rebecca, remember who was there for you when you returned to the Song family? Who helped you adjust and navigate this circle, sparing you from being ostracized? Edward did all of that for you, so don't be ungrateful." Rebecca fell silent. She always seemed willing to compromise when it came to Edward, but after a long pause, she finally spoke. "Do you have proof?" "What?" I said. "Do you have proof?" Rebecca's voice turned passionate. "There's no evidence at all that Nestor did this. Why is everyone so quick to blame him?" I couldn't help but glance at her, a bit surprised. So, she did know the importance of proof, yet in the past, she'd condemned me for Edward without any evidence. So righteously, hasn't he done enough wrong to Edward? Veronica's voice was hoarse with fury. "All these years, he schemed against Edward, stolen from him, repeatedly undermining him, and every time, Edward was magnanimous enough to forgive him. Isn't that enough?" Rebecca said nothing, but standing behind her, I found myself holding back laughter at their argument. Of course, Edward had to forgive me. Without me, who else would make him look like the grand, selfless protagonist? As my patience wore thin and I stifled a yawn, preparing to provoke Veronica into killing me, Rebecca spoke up. "I believe him," she said. "What?" I couldn't help my shock. "I believe Nestor. I believe he's innocent," Rebecca repeated, louder this time. Veronica's gaze toward us grew colder, more penetrating. "Don't put your faith in me," I said from behind Rebecca, my smirk unfaltering. "I'm already branded as the villain 100 times over. One more won't make a difference." With that, I tried to step past Rebecca and leave, but she grabbed my wrist, and as I turned back, she didn't look at me. Instead, she fixed her eyes on Veronica and asked, "What would drive someone to prove their innocence by choosing death?" "Rebecca, don't let him fool you," Veronica warned coldly, but Rebecca ignored her. Continuing, I kept wondering, who would go so far as to risk their life to clear their name? The only reason must be, she paused, swallowing back her sorrow, then finished. The only reason must be that he has faced countless moments of being misjudged, unable to defend himself, and this was his only way to prove himself. "Veronica, when you walked out on him earlier, he jumped right in front of me. He truly doesn't want to live." "Oh, now I got it." Rebecca had spent the afternoon casting glances my way, piecing together a story in her mind. She must have interpreted my genuine, joyful smile when I attempted to jump as the relief of escaping my suffering. I saw Veronica's pale fingers tremble, a flash of pain flickering in her eyes as she looked at me. I wanted to interrupt their fantasies, but Rebecca was already dragging me toward the door. She was still talking. They may not believe you, but I do. Nestor, come with me. No, this time. I shook her off. Rebecca looked at me, stunned, as I gave her a cold smile. Don't bother playing the good guy, Rebecca. I sneered. I don't trust you one bit. Seeing her actions, I knew that as long as I stayed by her side, I'd never get another chance to go home. Sticking with Veronica, who was still seething with anger, was a much better option. With the right push, I might even be able to achieve my perfect ending, my return home and her imprisonment. Chapter 6. I expected that, after rejecting her repeatedly, Rebecca would react with anger, maybe slip into her usual sarcastic tone with me, but she didn't. She just stood there, silently looking at me, her eyes gradually misting over. I won't let anything happen to you, she finally said, leaving those words behind as she turned and walked away. I looked back to see Veronica, who remained silent. You and she seem close, she remarked, her expression as cold as ever, though there was a trace of bitterness in her eyes that she probably hadn't even noticed. We're all right. I did raise her. After all, it was the first time I openly shared my relationship with Rebecca. Her troubled past in the slums had been thoroughly hidden by the Song family. No one knew how she survived or who she'd spent that time with. The next second, my world spun as Veronica pushed me back onto the sofa, her hands once again lingering at my neck, but unlike before, she squeezed gently this time, her touch almost intimate. I looked up at her, meeting her gaze in silence. After a long moment, she seemed to relent, sighing softly as she let go, her thumb brushing over the bruises on my neck that she'd left earlier. She rested her head on my chest and murmured, "Let's stop fighting. Tell me where Edward is, won't you?" For a brief moment, I thought I saw real emotion in her eyes, the kind I had glimpsed when she once asked me to marry her, holding a ring. Back then, she'd said, "No matter what happened before, as long as you're good from now on and don't do anything wrong, we'll be happy together." But I had already realized that she'd only pursued me to bring happiness to Edward, so I'd given up on her by then. Still, for the sake of the mission, I swallowed my humiliation and accepted the engagement ring she offered to me, but in her heart, meant for someone else. As she slipped the ring onto my finger, Veronica had smiled in relief. She'd even kissed me passionately amidst the crowd's cheers, though moments later, she'd left for Edward after hearing news of his car accident. And now, looking at her face once again, I allowed a smile to creep across my lips. Veronica's eyes lit up, her tone rising with a hint of hope. "Nestor, won't you just listen to me this once? I won't pursue what you did this time. If you stop hurting Edward, we can finally be happy together. In your dreams." My words cut through her speech, as if that would happen. "Veronica, do you think this is some fantasy where we all live in harmony? If you're so capable, then go ahead, kill me. Don't think I won't." Her voice turned cold. "Go ahead, do it. If you can't, then you're just a coward." I threw out the taunt, but soon enough, exhaustion hit, and my vision went black as I lost consciousness. While I was out, the system reminded me that I needed to hurry and leave this world. My time was running out. As I began to regain consciousness, my mind felt clouded. Warm fingers traced over my face, accompanied by the occasional gentle, warm kiss. I thought it must be a hallucination. In 7 years of courting Veronica and 5 years of being her boyfriend, the times she'd kissed me willingly could be counted on one hand. Yet this hallucination felt all too real. I could even hear her voice, tinged with exasperation, whispering in my ear, "Nestor, what am I going to do with you?" Unable to take it any longer, I opened my eyes, only to catch a fleeting glimpse of emotion in Veronica's gaze before she could mask it. I was momentarily stunned. Veronica was always so composed, so reserved. I'd never seen this expression on her face, a mixture of pity, resentment, restraint, and reluctance, emotions layered one over the other, making her look almost like a stranger. But this unfamiliarity only lasted a couple of seconds. Her expression soon hardened again. "Tell me where Edward is," she murmured, her voice low and almost hypnotic. In her hand, she casually toyed with a syringe. Noticing my gaze, she smiled and explained, "A rare item. Something that only circulates among the elite. Just a milliliter will induce unbearable pain for 3 minutes before the victim dies, and the coroner will only find evidence of a heart attack." I chuckled. Veronica's eyes lit up briefly as if she thought I'd finally relented, but her expression quickly morphed into shock, because I had grabbed her hand, pushed the syringe's needle to my neck, and injected it. "Veronica, let me tell you a secret." My voice was weak as I looked into her stunned, helpless eyes. I said, "Once, I was kind to you because I loved you. I know. She trembled, pulling me into her arms, her voice rising as she shouted for a doctor. Resting my head on her shoulder, I finished what I needed to say. "I loved you, but you never trusted me, so let it go. Veronica, just sharing a world with you is enough to make me sick." With that, I pushed her away and collapsed from her arms. As I fell, time seemed to slow, and I saw her face, filled with confusion and sorrow. Could Veronica actually feel sadness over me? No matter, I thought. Finally, I'm going home. Nestor. Nestor. Somewhere in my fading consciousness, I heard a familiar voice as the basement door was thrown open. It was Angelica, the girl next door who had cared for me growing up, and the novel's female lead. I heard her rushing footsteps and her frantic announcement, her voice cracking with urgency. They found Edward. It was all a scheme by the family's rival. What did you say? Veronica's trembling voice echoed. I could barely make out the rest of the conversation. My awareness drifted, my soul feeling light, as if floating. My parents' gentle, loving faces appeared before me, and I reached out, yearning to embrace them, but an overwhelming force dragged me back. When I opened my eyes, I was still in this body. A sterile hospital ceiling greeted me. You're awake, a gentle voice sounded from beside me. I turned to see Angelica, watching me with a look of concern. Dressed in a cheongsam with silver-rimmed glasses perched on her nose, she radiated a cool elegance without needing any adornment, the effortless charm befitting the novel's female lead. But right now, I had no interest in anyone else. Only one question filled my mind. Why am I still alive? My voice was heavy with disappointment. The hand she was using to peel an apple paused. After a long sigh, she set the apple down and came closer, tucking the blanket around me with care, looking down with a gentle expression. I've explained everything to them. Veronica feels too ashamed to visit you. It was all a misunderstanding. They were all in the wrong. Don't think too much about it. As she spoke, she reached out, softly ruffling my hair. No matter what, you still have your big sister here. I lay under the blanket, watching her actions, unable to stop the bitter smile from crossing my face. Well then, sister, maybe your boyfriend should apologize in public for all the rumors he spread about me implying I was the culprit. Angelica's face froze, and this time, she had no response to give me. Chapter 7. Angelica had always been the one in this world who seemed to defend me the most. At least, that's how it appeared on the surface. When I was a child, my parents in this world hadn't yet passed away in a car accident. Our families were neighbors then, and Angelica's parents, consumed by their research, often didn't have time to look after her. My parents, warm-hearted as they were, couldn't bear to see a child so alone, so they often invited her over to play. Eventually, our home became her second home. She practically ate at our house every day, and whenever my parents bought me gifts, they would prepare one for her as well. They even set up a small bed for her in the guest room. On nights when she was too scared to sleep alone, she would spend the night at our place. In return, Angelica often tutored me. She had inherited her parents' brilliance and had always been a top student. Thanks to her guidance, my grades were among the best in my year at that time. It was a beautiful period that came to an abrupt end with my parents passing. It was a perfectly ordinary summer. One stormy night, with thunder and lightning tearing through the sky, Angelica's parents called mine, saying Angelica had gone missing. The teacher said she left school as usual after classes, but she isn't picking up the phone at home. We're tied up with work and can't leave. Could you help us look for her? As my parents received the call from Angelica's father, I was leaning by the window, watching the storm with an inexplicable sense of dread in my heart. Mom tried to persuade Dad not to go, pointing out how dangerous it was to go out in such rare, extreme weather. But their worry for Angelica outweighed their concern for danger. After all, she was practically family. That night, their car skidded off the wet road into a river, and it wasn't until the storm cleared the next day that anyone found them. And that was when Angelica reappeared. She wore brand new clothes, looking lost and uncertain as she stood in front of me, who had just dashed out in tears after hearing the news. Later, I asked Angelica where she had gone that night. She remained silent for a long time before finally telling me that she had been escorting a lost little boy home that night. The boy lived in one of the city's wealthiest neighborhoods, and Angelica had walked a long way with him until they finally found his family's servants. By the time she tried to return, a torrential storm had begun, the thunder and lightning preventing her from continuing on. At that point, the boy she had helped warmly offered her a place to stay and invited her to spend the night. The next day, his family's driver took her home, but by then, everything had changed. When I heard this story, I'd asked her, red-eyed, why she hadn't called if she'd decided not to come back. She knew my parents' phone numbers by heart. She knew they'd worry, so why hadn't she said a word? Angelica didn't know how to answer and could only keep apologizing. Afterward, her family quickly moved away, and I, left without any guardians, ended up in the slums. Years later, after binding with the system and regaining my memories, I finally understood the truth. The boy Angelica had walked home that night was none other than Edward, and thus the fated meeting of the male and female leads began even earlier than I'd known. While my parents struggled to see through the rain, calling her name as they navigated the storm, Edward had proudly shown her around his opulent toy rooms. Hand in hand, young Angelica, enraptured by these new luxuries, had forgotten everything else. By the time she remembered, my parents were already lost, entombed in the cold river as they searched for her. Our family should have left her world then, leaving Angelica to grapple alone with her guilt until she gradually moved on with Edward's comforting presence. But I awakened and reappeared in their world. In an effort to get close to Veronica, I had worked my way into their high school, only to meet Angelica again. Years later, she still called herself my sister. Her childhood guilt had left her obsessively protective, unwilling to hide her favoritism for me. The once cool girl now wanted nothing more than to keep me close, to make up for her debt, but she had forgotten that we weren't actually siblings and that her overly intimate gestures could be misinterpreted. That was when Edward began to resent me, as he and Angelica reached an age when they should have been exploring their feelings. My presence drove a wedge between them. Angelica's excessive attention toward me left Edward unable to secure her affection, so he turned against me. Despite my explanations and outright refusal of Angelica's guilt-ridden attentions, nothing changed. So when Edward found out about my feelings for Veronica, he deliberately pursued her as well. The more Angelica focused on me, the more he sought Veronica's attention. Veronica loved Edward. Edward loved Angelica. Angelica chased after me, trying to atone, while I sought to save Veronica. We were all trapped in this twisted circle. Edward grew impatient, seeing me as a thorn in his side but unwilling to ruin his image in Angelica's eyes. He staged one situation after another, using every possible means to isolate and expel me from their world. As the protagonist, he merely needed to lift a finger, and the entire family backed him. And I had only myself and a system that sighed. Why is the protagonist like this? In the end, I became notorious, and Edward drifted further from his own character as a noble, magnanimous hero. This time, he falsely accused me of hiring people to kidnap him. Angelica, somehow, convinced him to admit that the incident was orchestrated by his family's rivals. I didn't know how much she knew, so I changed my question. If I told you only one of us could live between Edward and me, what would you do? Nestor, don't say such foolish things, she pleaded, giving me a bitter smile. Tell me what you want. I'll make it happen. I lay back, smirking. Then kill me. Angelica paused for a few seconds. That's the one thing I can't do. Anything else? Then make Edward kneel and apologize. If you won't kill me, I swear I'll kill him. Nestor, her voice, usually so composed, now edged with anger. Edward only did those things because of me. If you want to hate anyone, hate me. The next moment, she realized she'd said too much, looking up with a face gone pale. Too late. So, Angelica, you knew all along. I laughed coldly, feeling my last shred of hope slip away. Nestor, she faltered, desperately searching for words, but nothing came. Of course, she couldn't say it. She couldn't admit that she had known the truth all along, standing by, watching, as I was wrong time and time again. When Edward accused me of stealing his branded watch, I opened my bag to prove him wrong, and he pulled out doctored surveillance footage to frame me. Later, others stepped forward to accuse me of selling the watch. They had forged a transaction record, transferred money into my welfare account, and fabricated a case against me, branding me a thief throughout high school. And you knew all of this, Angelica. I laughed even as tears rolled down my face. This time, I felt true disappointment. If my parents could see this, the person they had died for, how would they feel? Angelica, my neighbor and childhood sister, her once proud posture now crumbling with every word I spoke. Chapter 8. Back when I was publicly bullied at school under a host of false accusations, I would look at the angry faces around me, vowing to reveal the truth someday. But how could I, alone, ever stand up to the powerful family, who orchestrated everything for Edward? Every time I tried to explain, I'd be met with a deeper pitfall. All I could do was watch as the misunderstandings piled up. If you'd spoken up even once back then, maybe they'd believe you. Even if they wouldn't believe me, you can defend him all you want, but am I not a person too? Did I deserve all this? I looked at Angelica, speaking each word deliberately. Her hands shook as she tried to reach out, as she used to, but I pushed her away. Angelica, who are you loyal to? I laughed through my tears. Stop it, please stop. She hunched over, shaking as a fit of coughs racked her body, but I ignored her, continuing. You wanted to make it up to me, yet you also protected Edward. You tried to have it both ways but failed at both. I must have been cursed to know someone like you. Suddenly, Angelica slapped herself hard, her glasses flying off, and her pale face marked with 5 distinct fingerprints. She trembled, unable to defend herself. Finally, the once proud woman knelt on the cold hospital floor, her voice hoarse as she said, I was wrong. Nestor, I wanted too much. I failed both you and Edward. Tears rolled down her face as she looked up at me, her gaze shattered, nearly desperate. What do I have to do to make you forgive me? Please. Nestor, your parents are gone. I just want you to keep living. She reached out, trembling, trying to touch the hem of my clothes, her body convulsing from the memories that tormented her, but I only stepped back, looking down at her. Angelica, I'm no fool. I'm done with your empty promises. With that, I turned and left the room. She collapsed onto the floor, gasping. Her face flushed as she struggled for breath, still trying to call me back. Nestor, she forced a faint smile. Can't you forgive your sister? Before I could respond, another voice came from the doorway, pushing Angelica aside. It was Rebecca, who had overheard everything. Straddling Angelica, her tear-filled eyes were full of rage as she shoved her repeatedly. How dare you ask for his forgiveness? Does making him suffer make you feel better? Do you people have any conscience at all? I trusted you with Nestor, and this is how you repay him. I'm sorry, Angelica whispered weakly. Before fainting, Rebecca rolled off her and clutched her head in frustration. You're all disgusting. I believed in you, yet I treated him horribly. I'm no better than any of you. Covering her eyes with one hand, she cried, Brother, I was wrong. I shouldn't have doubted you. You've been through so much. I regret everything. I didn't mean to treat you that way. Her loud sobs eventually drew in the medical staff, and Angelica was taken to the ER. Rebecca, however, remained, refusing to leave. Nestor, come with me, please, she begged, her young face pleading. If you stay with Veronica, she'll kill you. I'm begging you, please come with me. But I ignored her, following the family's bodyguards without looking back. Why? She called after me, her voice trembling. You used to care about me the most. Why do you only see Veronica now? Aren't we the ones who were closest? Closest? I echoed the word, unable to hide the sneer in my smile. You didn't think about that when you called me vile and despicable. Rebecca, you're no better than Veronica. You're both disgusting. I left her lost figure behind, not looking back this time. Chapter 9. I wasn't sure how much Veronica knew about what had happened in the hospital, but from that day on, she stopped appearing before me. Maybe she didn't know how to face me, or maybe she couldn't accept the reality that her unforgettable first love had long since soured. Veronica avoided me, leaving me to figure out how to end my own life. I attempted everything, jumping off the roof, biting my tongue, slitting my wrists, even trying to drown myself in the bathtub. But the family had too many eyes on me. The housekeeper, MS Wu, tearfully called Veronica, pleading, Miss, please come see him. He's breaking apart. But Veronica still didn't show up. Instead, every potentially dangerous item in the house was removed, and even the windows were sealed shut. With nothing else to do, I started banging my head against the wall and cursing Veronica's ancestors for 18 generations. Veronica didn't get angry. Instead, she subtly let the household staff drop hints that she hadn't been looking for Edward these days. She also started sending me gifts, luxury car keys, watches, ties. Each day, a different gift appeared on my bedside table. I threw them out, and she just kept sending more. Sometimes, if I woke up early, I'd even catch a glimpse of her hurriedly leaving my room. This standoff between Veronica and me dragged on, with the system reminding me to hurry up. I told it not to worry, someone would break first, and that someone was Rebecca. She came to the family estate multiple times, trying to take me away, even going so far as to alarm the elders of the Song family. She threatened them with her own life, demanding they intervene to get me away from Veronica. Veronica ruled the family now, and when she was stubborn, she wouldn't yield to anyone. The two families clashed, creating a nasty public rift, and at one point, things got so ugly that they nearly severed ties altogether. Finally, Rebecca threw down the gauntlet in front of Veronica. She said, if I hadn't been taken away back then, you wouldn't have a place by his side at all. You're just a thief who picked up something you don't cherish. Her words finally provoked Veronica. That night, I was half asleep when I suddenly felt a warm body press against me, accompanied by the strong smell of alcohol. I opened my eyes to find Veronica's face, filled with grievance. I had never seen her like this, clinging to me like a discarded puppy, holding my hand tightly against her flushed cheek. Honey, she said, my love for you is stolen. She murmured pitifully. She said I don't cherish you. I didn't mean to. I just didn't know how to face you. Veronica, I'm not your husband. You walked out on our engagement ceremony the moment it started. I'm not even your fiancé. I coldly interrupted. My words stunned her, her body freezing midair, the haze of drunkenness slowly fading from her eyes as clarity returned. But then she chose to pretend nothing was wrong, clinging to me again. No, my Nestor loves me. He'll be my only husband. But I just looked at her coldly. Veronica, you're not young anymore. Stop playing these games. If you had the same loyalty to Edward that you did before, I might still have some respect for you. At last, my words angered her. She slammed a fist into the pillow beside me, her hand sinking into the soft down feathers. After a long pause, I looked up and met her bloodshot eyes. What do you expect me to do? My parents only saw me as a tool from birth. If it hadn't been for Edward, I wouldn't have survived. What am I supposed to do? She screamed, her voice laced with despair. After a moment, her tone softened again, as if she'd found new resolve. In the end, you're still to blame for all the wrongs you've done, but it's okay. Nestor, I forgive you. She was unhinged. I looked at her coldly as she struggled with her pain. Yes, he's innocent and wonderful, so why didn't you marry him? Or were you unwilling? Veronica, don't you realize? You're so pathetic it's sickening. No wonder Edward could never love you. You don't deserve anyone's love. I must have been blind. Shut up. Something in my words pushed her over the edge. She shoved me down again, gripping my throat tightly. You promised you'd stay by my side, that you'd love me. She looked at me, her voice raw with despair. Why can't I feel your love anymore? She screamed, her voice trembling with fear and helplessness she didn't even realize, her tears blurring her vision as she searched my face for any trace of affection. My face flushed red as I struggled for breath, but I just sneered at her. Yes, that's right. Choke me when I'm gone. You can face the consequences. But just before I suffocated, she came to her senses, abruptly releasing me. You're trying to make me kill you. You'd rather die than stay with me. For a moment, her once proud posture seemed to collapse, leaving her looking utterly defeated. She bent over, coughing, and then started to mutter to herself, as if to reassure herself. No, you still love me, Nestor. You're just mad at me. I'll make it up to you. She leaned forward, clutching me tightly. Let's get married. Okay, we'll live happily. Just the two of us. No one else. Her voice was thick with tears, soaking my shoulder. I pushed her away and slapped her hard. Veronica, if you want to kill me, just do it. Spare me the nauseating talk. The slap left her stunned, her face turned to the side. Finally, she stood up in silence. As she reached the door, she laughed bitterly. You blame me for favoring Edward, but are you so innocent? Angelica broke ties with the By family for you, and Rebecca only has eyes for you. Can you really say there's nothing between you and them? You're right. I laughed behind her. If they're so good to me, then I should leave you and choose them instead. Veronica seemed almost burned by my laughter, fleeing the room as if she couldn't get away fast enough. The next day, someone unexpected showed up. It was Edward. According to him, Veronica had asked him to explain their relationship to me. He was dressed in a custom-made suit, smiling pleasantly. As soon as he sat down, he sighed. I'm troubled by how Veronica keeps hovering around me. What am I supposed to do? I ignored him, my gaze fixed on the tie around his neck. My dazed appearance only seemed to amuse him more, his smile growing wider. Honestly, you shouldn't be so down. Even after everything, Angelica still pleaded with me on your behalf, convincing me to clear your name. She really cares about you as a brother. He raised his glass to me with a refined gesture. This time, he mentioned another name, Rebecca. When she was first brought back to the Song family, she'd talk about her brother constantly. She wanted to go back to find him, but they wouldn't let her. So I told her that when she'd grown enough, her brother would be happier to see her. Eventually, she got to meet her brother again, but from that point on, she never mentioned him again. Turns out the brother she once thought so noble had become a vile, money-grubbing loser. With every sentence, his smile deepened, his gaze locked on my face, eager to see me crack, but he never got the reaction he wanted. I only smiled back and said, yes, Rebecca's wonderful. If she'd only develop a fake product to sell to your company like Angelica, she'd be even better. Edward's face turned cold, his smile vanishing completely. To ruin the By family and clear my name, that was the real compensation I demanded from Angelica. In recent years, the By family had invested heavily in cutting-edge technology, pouring nearly all of their wealth into their latest project. But on the day of the launch, Angelica had presented a flawed, outdated prototype. The By family had trusted Angelica, their future matriarch, implicitly. Her actions hit their finances hard, but even so, Edward couldn't bring himself to press charges against his girlfriend. Instead, he stormed over to me. Furious, I had no patience for his rant, so I picked up a glass of water and hurled it at him. As he flinched, I grabbed his tie, twisting it around his neck. So, big shot, you're in the hands of this loser now, I whispered in his ear. Nestor, if you do this, Veronica will never forgive you. Even now, he remained calm, but as his face began to turn purple and his struggles grew desperate, his composure shattered. When Veronica burst into the room, her eyes landed on me first. For a brief moment, I saw joy. Joy that I'd finally proven my guilt, attacking her unforgettable first love right in front of her. Or perhaps it was joy that she could finally return to her righteous pedestal, condemning me from a position of moral superiority. Nestor, so you were only pretending before. You really haven't changed at all. I was right about you, Veronica said, her face dark and grim. At her words, I loosened my grip slightly, allowing Edward to gasp for air. He seized the moment, his voice trembling as he pleaded with me. I can help you get out of here. I don't trust you. It's true, you just want to prove your place in Veronica's heart, right? Let's make a bet. He forced a smile, his face still contorted in a desperate attempt to win my agreement. I frowned, listening to his whispered plan. In the end, I laughed and nodded, releasing him. Veronica rushed forward immediately, pulling Edward, who was still shaking, away and preparing to take him to the hospital. As they left, he cast a long, deep look back at me. I hope you'll have thought of a proper apology by the time I see you next. Chapter 10. Edward truly had a way of handling Veronica. After he returned from the hospital, she removed all the surveillance on me at the estate, ignoring Ms. Wu's pleas. She even ordered the bodyguards to throw me out of the house. Miss, I'm begging you. You'll regret this one day, Ms. Wu said tearfully. I never will, Veronica replied with a cold sneer, her expression one of absolute confidence. As if she had already figured me out, I played along, pretending I didn't want to leave. The more I resisted, the more it solidified the idea that all my previous antics were just attempts to get her attention. Veronica's face grew darker. Edward was right. I've been too lenient with you. You really do need a lesson. Finally, I couldn't help but lower my head and ask her softly, after all this time, have you ever once sincerely believed in me? She frowned, as if recalling everything I had done for her, acts of genuine care and love that never amounted to the fleeting image she'd held onto of Edward. Nestor, playing hard to get has lost its charm, she said, her face showing a hint of pity, leaving me with nothing but the suggestion to reflect on my actions. She closed the door behind her. I turned around and found Edward standing in the shadows. When I opened my eyes again, both Edward and I were bound at the edge of a cliff not far away. I saw Veronica, Rebecca, and a team of SWAT officers, all looking tense. Let him go, I said. Let Nestor go, do you hear me? I heard Rebecca's desperate screams as she tried to rush forward, only to be held back repeatedly. Our captors ignored her. Instead, focusing on Veronica, they shouted, Miss E, you can only choose one. Who lives and who dies is up to you. Veronica's expression instantly darkened. Name your price, and I'll pay it. Just let them go. We don't want money. We just want to see the mighty CEO lose the two men she cares about most. One of the thugs taunted, making Veronica's face grow even darker. I noticed her signal, and a sniper positioned in the distance took aim, but the next moment, Edward, beside me, let out a pained cry as he was pushed closer to the edge. When Edward regained his composure, he called out to her, his voice trembling, Veronica, Veronica, don't worry about me, he said. There was still a bandage on his forehead from where I'd struck him the previous day. Standing there against the wind, he looked like a young bamboo stalk, frail and on the verge of snapping. Veronica's gaze lingered on his injury for a moment, her expression dazed. Stay still. One of the captors yanked him roughly, forcing him to stumble closer to the cliff's edge, making everyone hold their breath. Veronica's face was filled with an almost tangible murderous intent. Edward, however, glanced at me and gave a sly smile. You've lost again, he whispered. Aren't you afraid they'll discover this is all an act you orchestrated? I asked. Heh. Edward sneered. With the Bai family backing me, they'll never find out. Hasn't it always been this way? He raised an eyebrow at me, his smile growing even more smug. The thug he had hired pulled him even closer to the cliff. Miss E, if you can't make a decision, we'll help you make it. Veronica. Edward screamed in pain, clinging to her name as if it were his lifeline. Veronica clenched her fists tightly, giving the thugs one final warning. I won't let you get away with this. Cut the nonsense. Make a choice. Edward looked like he was moments away from falling into the abyss. Finally, Veronica's hands relaxed, her gaze filled with pain as she looked at me. Nestor, was this all your plan again? She asked. You don't want money, just to force me to choose. Are you trying to prove who means more to me? She laughed bitterly. I've indulged you too many times. This time, I won't let you go too far. As expected, Veronica chose Edward. In that instant, the scene fell silent. Rebecca, who had been held back until now, rushed forward and slapped Veronica. Edward, meanwhile, gave me a triumphant smile. Goodbye. He turned to leave. The men restraining me loosened their grip as well. Veronica, barely perceptibly, sighed in relief. Nestor, stop using these childish tactics to test me. But her words stuck in her throat. I deliberately stepped back, moving to the edge of the cliff. With one more step, I would fall, disappearing into the ocean below. Nestor, Veronica called my name in a trembling voice. Brother, don't throw your life away for these people. Rebecca, held down on the ground, was crying uncontrollably. Come back, brother. Let's live our lives together. I was wrong back then. I shouldn't have let jealousy drive me away. I should never have left you to this horrible woman. But I only shook my head gently, looking at them with a calm gaze. Veronica, this is the 101st time. What? You chose Edward for the 101st time, I said, watching the panic grow on her face, a subtle satisfaction rising within me. I genuinely loved you. If you'd chosen to believe in me even once, we wouldn't be here today. Then, I turned my gaze to Edward. There's something you might not know. I left a gift for both of you. I pointed to the second button on my shirt. Right here. There's a hidden camera. Everything you just said and did has been broadcast live. I wanted to go home, but I didn't want to leave behind a tarnished name. The injustices I endured were real, and I didn't want to be remembered as a thief after I was gone. When I first came to this world, I greeted everyone with nothing but kindness. For a brief moment, Edward looked panicked, but then he seemed to calm down, as if realizing something. Of course, he had the Bai family. Manipulating the footage and shutting down my stream would be child's play for them. In Edward's mind, he assumed my broadcast had been cut off almost instantly, but the look on my face made him hesitate, and he grabbed someone's phone in a panic. The internet was already flooded with headlines about him. Hashtag Bai family airs manipulative games. Hashtag rich boy bullying. Hashtag. These phrases quickly rose to the top of the trending lists, with countless people posting clips from the live broadcast as evidence. The video clearly captured his confessions of slandering me and every vile word he'd spoken. Veronica, unable to hold back her curiosity, pulled out her phone to check, her face turning pale as she looked up, meeting my gaze. "It's fake. It's all fake," Edward screamed, pointing accusingly at me. But then he glanced around, realizing something. The heroine of his sweet romance novel wasn't there. He turned to me, and I didn't hold back the truth. It was her idea. She even supplied the camera. "So, the rest of your lives will be spent hating each other. Enjoy tearing each other apart." With that, I leaned back, in full view of everyone. I fell off the cliff. No, a wail rose behind me, though I couldn't tell if it came from Veronica or Rebecca, but I no longer cared. As I plunged into the ocean's depths, my soul seemed to rise above. I saw Veronica kneeling, her face streaked with tears as she stared in horror over the edge of the cliff, eventually vomiting blood. Rebecca broke free from her restraints, attempting to hurl herself off the cliff after me, but was stopped at the last moment by the Song family members. Meanwhile, in the distant city, Angelica sat in silence at her computer, repeatedly refreshing the trending topics. A deep red gash ran across her wrist, blood dripping steadily, but she only glanced out the window. After a while, she closed her eyes and whispered, "Nestor, you must really hate me. It's okay. I've avenged you, and I haven't even spared myself. When we meet again, I'll treat you better. I promise." In that final moment, I saw my parents' kind faces and the concerned looks of my friends. Just as I was about to depart from this world, I heard the system's voice. "A strong wish to keep you alive has been detected. Mission complete. Reward granted." When I opened my eyes again, my mother was gripping my hand, overcome with emotion. "A miracle happened, Nestor. The doctor said your illness vanished overnight." I couldn't hold back any longer and threw myself into their arms, crying. I was finally home. Epilogue. Much later, after I'd returned from the hospital and resumed my school life surrounded by friends and teachers, I heard the system's voice again. It was time for a follow-up. Accompanied by the system, my spirit revisited the world inside the book, witnessing the endings of those I'd left behind. After seeing me fall from the cliff, Veronica went mad, directing all her rage at Edward. She uncovered the hidden truths, forcing Edward to publicly apologize for slandering me. But she didn't stop there. She launched an all-out campaign against the Bai family, draining their resources, and within 3 years, they went bankrupt. Even kneeling outside the Yi family mansion in the rain couldn't soften her heart. Eventually, she spiraled into a life of drunken self-destruction, ignoring her responsibilities until she was dismissed as CEO by the Yi family. She returned alone to the school where we'd once studied together, clinging to our shared past. One day, she began coughing up blood, but she paid no mind, drinking and calling my name. She was in the final stages of stomach cancer when I visited her in her dingy apartment. She'd been unconscious for 3 days. Her spirit seemed to see me, smiling with a dazed, childlike happiness. "You look so different now, happier than ever." "That's good," she said softly, reaching out to touch my cheek. I turned my head, avoiding her touch. Veronica looked disappointed, a bitter smile forming on her lips. She said she'd soon be gone, able to join me and make amends. But I only laughed. "Only you're dying, Veronica. I have a new life in another world, filled with light and warmth. You're the one who will rot in darkness forever. Even in death, we'll be worlds apart." With that, I vanished, leaving her sobbing alone. As for Edward and Angelica, Angelica's attempt to end her life was thwarted by her family, who managed to save her. But with the Bai family targeting her for the disgrace she brought upon them, she became their new victim. Before Veronica finished off the Bai family, Edward turned his bullying methods on Angelica, repaying her with all the cruelties they had inflicted upon me. When the Bai family collapsed, Edward went to Angelica's house, asking if she would still give him a home. She welcomed him inside, and that night, she lit the gas. Neither of them saw the sunrise. Rebecca despised her former weakness, but after breaking away from the Song family, she moved to a remote mountain area to teach, disappearing from the world. When she saw me in her dreams, she was overjoyed. "Brother, I've learned to help others, just like you did. Are you proud of me?" But I looked at her with an indifferent expression and shook my head. "Rebecca, your choices are none of my concern. From the moment you decided to hide the fact that the boy who raised you for 7 years was your brother, we ended. I have my own life to live, she cried, reaching out to hold me back, but I had already turned away, leaving behind the shadows of the past. From now on, I would look forward, leaving that darkness far behind.